Hey, sports card fans, it's John, Boggs fan. Hope you're all doing well. Joined here, as always, with my co host, Mike, baseball collector, here for another episode of the Vintage 100 Index Hobby Report. How you doing, Mike?
Hey, sports cards fans, Mike, baseball collector here. Just excited to be here, John. And it's great this Christmas season just to spend time with your friends. And so I just want you to know how much I really appreciate you and what you're doing here.
In fact, I just watched, I was a little bit behind on watching Double D uh, Dylan's video where he had um, Ken's cardboard on, and he mentioned me, and I think it was Ken who gave me the nickname of because of my voice and demeanor, the Mr. Rogers of the YouTube community.
That's
So
good.
he said, I hope John doesn't get offended. And I'm like, that's perfect. That's how I just go about things. So yeah, I'm the Mr. Rogers of the YouTube community here. So
There
wear
are
it with pride.
worse people to be compared to. I wonder if
Exactly.
we started giving like doppelgangers of real life celebrities to the YouTube community, who would be who? That would
Yeah,
be
that would be interesting. That would be a cool contest to try to match people up. Now, it'll start getting scary if I start doing my videos in a sweater, but I haven't gone there yet. But are you all ready for Christmas?
I am. I am. Ready to go.
I
Ready
have
for
everything purchased, nothing wrapped yet, but for a guy, I think I'm ahead of the game. So,
Well, it's a beautiful day in the card room today. A beautiful day,
both our
wouldn't you
card
say?
rooms, we got our matching, catalogs. You have the Beast, I have the catalog here. It's like, yep, perfect day in the neighborhood. So, all right, let's get into the data here. There's some interesting stuff that I want to have a discussion about here. An interesting thing happened while I was updating the data. Now, again, this is the hobby report for December, but the data is through the end of November. And for those of you maybe new to this series of videos here, in terms of the data points, we don't enter every single sale. The data point that we enter is the last recorded sale for that month. Now, there are occasions, and I'm not sure if I brought this up before, but there are occasions where there's more than one sale, say for November 30th. There's two copies of that card sold, say on November 30th. So, what I do is I take an average of those two sales. I don't average everything for November or include every single data point or sale for November. But if there is one for that final day, I do average that. And as I was updating the data for through November here, there was one card that had a quite a large anomaly to it. And I want to bring that up and focus on it just for a few minutes because I wasn't sure how that was going to actually impact the data or the index for this month. And the card in question, and you may not be able to see or tell from the top there, but it's the 1950 Bowman Ted Williams. Now, I highlighted the two sales here. There were two sales, and the latest ones in November. There were two on November 6th. There was an eBay auction, and the final sale price was $840. Then there was a PWCC auction that ended the same day. It was an auction, 61 bids, $3,720.
Jeez.
And I'm like, what's going on? Because, that's a big difference.
Yeah, no doubt.
And here's the auction listing. Now I'm don't have an account with PWCC, and I know don't want to get into the whole discussion of PWCC and all that stuff. We could spend an entire episode just talking about PWCC, but it is a data point that vintage card prices use amongst other auction houses. So it is a data point. Now, it looks here, and again, this could be a whole other discussion. This one is slabbed with their little eye appeal sticker. And according to the
Superior.
experts, at PWCC, which who are we to question, they determined that this card had superior eye appeal. So not only has it been third party graded a PSA 5, in their determination, it has superior eye appeal, because I don't know what good eye appeal is. So they're telling us that it's superior. So I have no idea if that had any factor in it all, but that's a huge data point that we'll see. That's just going to be part of the data. So
Well,
here's the specifics. Yeah.
we can pull that other one and look at the image and see if it's different.
I did. Let me see if I can share my, well,
I'll do it.
Okay.
Let me pull it up.
Yeah, see if you can pull it up. I think I looked at it and I seem to recall it was pretty well centered. That it to me it looked like a nice PSA 5.
Well, let's take a look. 1950 Bowman. While I'm doing this, one of the things I love about VCP is it's super easy to use.
Yeah.
And I'm not advocating for people to use it. You choose to use it if you want, but it sure is nice. Okay. All right, I'm going to share my screen real quick here. And we'll be able to take a look. This is fun to me, like doing this kind of stuff. Okay. So here's the 840, and it's 4 sharp corners. I mean, that's a big time seller. It's not like, it's some weird auction that would end at a weird time.
Yeah.
And looking at this 5, I mean, look at that.
Okay. It's, there's I mean, I've seen some 5s that have some issues, and maybe it's a quote unquote overgraded 5.
Well, look at there's a few things here. There's the serial number.
Yep.
Which is old. That means this was graded, God, at least 10 years ago, maybe more. Okay. And so I think I can just eyeball this card and tell you that ain't a 5 today. If it got sent in, cracked, and resubmitted, you're not going to get a bump on that.
Right.
So I guess I can even open the image on a different, can make it even bigger. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, it should. I think when you do that, it saves it and you can pull it up or something.
It does. So I'm going to stop that. And I know you don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but it's
interesting. I've never had. I mean, I've had some jumps, and usually it is. I think last month we talked about cards that had not sold for quite a while, and then there was a sale, and sometimes there is some of the examples I gave, there was a decent bump up, but nothing close to this.
It didn't work. I'm going to give this one more try, and if it doesn't work, then
all right,
we'll just be out of luck on that. Well, pooey. I have a much bigger version of it. It's just not letting me show. That's really weird. Okay, I guess not. Maybe that did it. Let me see if that does it. Nope. Okay. So much for that idea.
Oh, well.
But this episode's doing great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it again, like you said, even if that was an older slab for the 4 sharp corners, and let's say it really is a 4. You can even go back to maybe the sale before that, and the sale before that, and the sale before that. It still doesn't even come close to what that PWCC even. And again, maybe you can, if you still have VCP up, what does the PSA 6 sell for? I mean, it can't be.
Yeah, not even close. The last one sold for $1,020.
So I don't know what's going on, and I don't want to throw any conspiracies, accusations. Again, we're dealing with PWCC. I don't want to go there, but again, it's a data point.
Right.
So take it as it is. That's influenced here as part of the index for December. So, and again, but what I did, as I do with every card, so there was nothing special about this one. Since there were 2 sales on November 6th, I averaged those 2 sales. So the actual impact to the index was a data point of $2,280. So I just wanted to be clear with everyone in terms of, you're not going to have that 3,400 or whatever the amount was. It's the average of those 2 sales.
The last 7 sold for 2,300.
Yeah.
7, a PSA
Yeah.
7. So,
Something's I don't know.
yeah.
So the impact of this Ted Williams PSA 5 or the data. So in November, it was 676.59, and then the average for December was 2280, about a $1,600 jump in the. Now it's not in the average because or the index, because again, we're taking the index as an average of the 100 cards. So it's going to have some impact, but we'll see what impact there is. But that was a 237% increase in. Again, that's a big anomaly, and you're going to see it shoot straight back down come January. But even with that large bump because of the 50 Bowman Williams, the index for December went down from a revised 1,225.38 to 1193.93. So about a 2.5% drop, even with that big increase there in the Ted Williams card. And for the year, it's down 6%. So I think November was either fairly even or up slightly. We had another downturn here for December. Here is the chart of the prices here. You can see, last month there was a slight bump up, but 3 previous months was a decline, down for the year, but generally speaking, not a big plummet, which is, again, what we've seen over the last, not quite year and a half, maybe the last 15 months.
Yep.
Some movement down and up a little bit, sort of a slow moving on the open waters, nothing too stormy. But that trend line, which is what we introduced last month, I did note, and it's barely noticeable because, again, these, unless you have a dramatic change, you're not going to really see a change in the slope. But the slope did go down ever so slightly. Just I could tell by the where the dots on the data points are and match it up with the line. It just ever so slightly, but the slope did go down. All right, let's break it down as we normally do by decade. Not a lot of black for this month in the different decades. The 1940s cards were down about 9%. Year to date, up slightly, 3%, essentially unchanged. For the 1950s, no movement, hardly any movement at all, but for the year, down about 8%. That's interesting for the 50s. Like the last 3 months have just been really hardly moving at all between the 28 cards that make up the 1950s in the index. For the 1960s, this is where part of the index went down again for the month, down about 8.5%, 6.25% for the year. Definitely softening. The index actually hit a high point in, was it January, March, in May, even going back to the heyday of early 2021. It actually reached a high point in May of this year. And so
Right.
it's seen a decline, a correction maybe. Maybe it was a little bit of a lagger. Maybe all the attention was on 30s and 40s cards. especially maybe the 50s. You saw the big increase there in the 50s. The, I guess, more high profile cards, I would say. You had the big rookies, the Mantles, the Mays, the Koufax, the Clemente, the Aaron. When the investment bug hit a lot of collectors or new people into the market, those were I think some of the cards that they focused around. And so maybe the 60s got left behind a little bit, not too much. You did see an increase there. But yeah. And then finally, for the 70s, not much change at all for December, but down 9% for the year. And again, that has just it's not been flatline, but man, not much going on with the 70s.
And it's important to point out the dollar amounts of the 70s,
Exactly.
especially as you're talking
Yep.
about an average of $140 a card, and it
Yep.
got as high as 160. So it's not
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
even though the percentage change might feel like, oh, not down 9%. That's like $20,
Yeah.
or $10. It's not a
Yeah.
big,
Yeah. It's not yet, probably not even $10. If the average card is a little around $150,
right.
yeah, the change in the dollar amount is not that significant. And again, even with that movement, I mean, even going back to 2019, I mean that the index of those 23 cards were what, 70, maybe $75. So in 4 years, maybe a doubling, which is just a slow and steady, like traditional vintage cards have been. They just over time, they just slowly start creeping up. And if you look back a long enough time period, say, oh, hey, it's doubled. But
Right.
you're not talking about a 3-month time frame. You're talking about a 3 or 4 year time frame. And so here's the combination of all the different decades. The 100 index there is in blue, and again, you can see that the 50s had very little impact on the index, even with that Ted Williams card pretty flat, which again tends to move the index, as well as the 60s. I should say probably the 40s. The 40s and 50s, I think in general, move the index up or down the greatest. Because again, we're talking the average price.
Right.
Um, so not a whole lot of news or change there for December. All right. Now, what I've been doing for the last couple months is taking a look at the number of cards that have gone up, number of cards that have gone down, and the number of cards that have gone unchanged. Now, these aren't the same cards. These are just counting the number of cards that have gone up or down. And in any given month, it has nothing to do with any particular card. Okay.
Right.
So for December, we had one less card go up than the previous month, but 6 more cards go down. So we have another, if you look at the blue and sort of the orange trend lines, the blue are the number of cards that have gone up, and the orange is the number of cards that have gone down. So back in, it looks like April, we had a switch where it went from more cards going down than up, and it switched back again in August, and now it's switched back again in December. What that really means, not sure, because you could have a card like the Ted Williams go up, in this case $1,600, and you could have 3 cards go down for a total of $20. So it I don't know. I'm not sure if it makes sense to continue this analysis, because I'm not really sure how much we can pull from it. But I thought I would do it at least one more month, because I started it and now there's a full year of data. But I don't know if there's anything that you can see from this.
I I still think I mean, look, if 40 is the number of cards that went down, that's still pretty significantly lower in terms of number of cards versus August or June or May, right?
Mhm.
Um, but the fact that in any given month over this entire year, you have 30 to somewhere close to 50% of the cards down on a month over month basis.
Yeah.
And so that's significant to me, just to see a trend that, wow, you'd think it'd be interesting if what we would want to do now, I think, is look at 2020 and 2021, how many cards were up, down for those years, and then
Mhm.
go, hey, look, we averaged per month this many cards that went lower or up. In 2021, we only had this, see if that tells us a story. You
Yeah.
would think, my hypothesis would be in 2021, especially when we have all the spikes, you're going to
Mhm.
see way more cards going up
Yeah.
than down, a disproportionate number.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, maybe good for next month or whatever to take this data and take it 12, 24 months back. And
Yeah,
maybe not just 12 months to get the start of the peak, but maybe again before the peak.
right,
So we can see, oh, hey, here's look like you said, I would guess probably as well those early months in 2021 where we see the index really going up. I wouldn't be surprised if the number of cars going up is probably in that 60 range.
right. And what this should tell you too is not everything's up all the time, not everything's down all the time. There's a lot of cards that don't trade a lot, which is the unchanged typically.
Mhm. Yep.
Uh, but it'll be really, I would think this is more normal what we're seeing in 2022. I
Mhm.
bet if we looked at 2020, an additional hypothesis would be it's going to look pretty similar to this.
Yeah.
That'd be an interesting, like, look at each year kind of
And
as a
I mean, that's
sample.
easy for me to put together because I mean, again, the data's there. It's just counting, right?
Right. Right.
But I think a larger picture, and I think hopefully a result for people watching this, and the data that we've been going over here now for hasn't been quite a year, but the data is going back for 4 years now. Is people talk in generalities in the hobby. Oh, the hobby, prices are going up, they're crashing, they're going down, it's a boom, it's a bust. People tend to usually focus on certain cards. And I've seen some videos where they're pointing out high dollar sales. Oh, well, the 86 Flair Michael Jordan in a PSA 10. Look how that's plummeted. So card prices are tanking everywhere. Basketball's tanking. But as the data shows right here, even in vintage, cards are constantly going up or down. Even when some segments are going down, you may have other cards for whatever reason, the player, the year, the condition, you name it, they could still be doing well while others are still going down. So I to me, it says don't necessarily buy into the general comments of, oh, the hobby's crashing or prices are crashing and vintage is down or ultra modern is going down or whatever. Now, again, I'm not doing data here for ultra modern basketball or baseball. All right. We're focusing on vintage. So it is a different animal, but I, I don't know. Your thoughts? Am I
No, I mean, I noticed there's 7 months this year where that's interesting. You put December 2022, but it's really November's data, right? So,
yes.
okay. Um, but there's 5 months of this 12 months worth of data that there were more down cards than up cards. And there were 7 months where there were more up cards than down cards. So the conclusion you would draw from that is there is no conclusion. It's one of those, just who knows, and that's okay for it to be like, wow, it's really hard you can't say what's going to happen next month,
Yeah.
it's, you can definitely say things aren't crashing because you
Right.
have an abundance of cards that are going up month after month.
Yeah. I think a crash you would see, the number of down cards for say 2 or 3 months in a row in that 60, 70
Exactly.
range.
Exactly.
We're not seeing it. We're
Right. It's benign
yeah,
data. Just like, okay, that makes
yeah,
sense. Some
yeah.
months there's a few more ups and downs, and some months there's more
Yeah.
downs than ups. And
I mean, again, if you look at the general trend of the ups, you're starting the year at 50, 56, 55, then you're getting the 40, and then in some 30s, dipping down to 25, but now it's back up to the upper 30s. So there is some general decline in the number of cards going up. But down, it's down's not even consistent one way or another.
right,
So that, I mean, you can make the conclusion that, hey, vintage is still doing strong. We're not
right,
strong, but not crashing. So yeah, but
definitely
I
not
think maybe for next month I'll take this and go back a couple years and see what we see what the data shows, because we're making hypotheses here.
Yep.
All right, let's keep this going on here. I don't want to let the have the video go on too long. Here we go. All right, now just to show that we mean what we say by, hey, we love comments on these videos, on your thoughts of what you think the data says, but any suggestions on what you want to see with the data. And Theo, a Clemente collector, uh, in he made a comment in the last video of, hey, it would be interesting to see how the 51 Bowman Mickey Mantle card and the change in the price of that card may have an effect, because I think that is the highest priced card in the index, how that may impact the index overall. So I thought, hey, that would be a good idea. And so not only did I do the 51 mantle, but I took a look at the 5 highest priced valued cards in the index based on what they were in December here, or at the end of November. So I took the 5 highest, and the first one here obviously is the 51 Bowman Mickey Mantle. And as you can see here, early 2021, you saw a huge jump from maybe, looks like maybe $16,000 up to 50, low 50s,
It was
52.
50, almost 55.
Yeah, almost 55. Then it came down to maybe around 25,000 or so, then up and down. And um, so I think there'll be another chart here that I'll show off. But if you look at that spike and then the downturn, that sort of mimics a lot of the index as a whole. But the second card, of course, is the 51 Bowman Willie Mays. And here again, you saw a huge spike there, beginning of 2021, lasted maybe a month or two, and then came back down. And we've had some couple other spikes um, in the value of that, but it's down for the year and for 2022.
Right.
So we'll see how that compares to the index as a whole. The third one is a 52 Topps Eddie Matthews. Now, this one doesn't have as much activity as the 252 Bowmans, but it's up there at over $10,000. So it is a big number in terms of the overall average of the index. But that too saw a spike up to about maybe 12,000, 13,000 early to mid 2021, and it's settled back down a little bit. And so the fourth one is the 49 Bowman Jackie Robinson. Now that one, the increase or the spike actually started a little bit earlier than the 251 Bowmans, um, and even the Eddie Matthews. That started a little bit of a increase at the end of 2020, which not sure why, but again, interesting to see. And of course, that has dropped down in price a little bit as well. And then the last one is the 54 Topps Hank Aaron. Again, a huge spike there in early 2021, and then fairly leveling off, maybe down a little bit for 2022. Um, but let's take a look at, so like I did with the decades, I did sort of combination graph with those 5 cards and the index. So this is what it looks like. It may look a little confusing here again, but on the left side data point where you see the dollar amounts there, those are the values of the individual cards. On the right-hand side, where it goes from 500 to 1,000, 1,500, that's the index. And the index is the blue shaded area. All right.
Okay.
So the 51 Mantle is in orange. The 51 Mays is sort of in a grayish area. Then you got Matthews in yellow, Robinson in, it's a lighter blue down at the bottom there, and then the 54 Aaron. So, I mean, if you look at those 5 cards, man, I mean, just right there, you can see how that index rose in the beginning of 2021. It is really interesting. And then as things settle down, you have movements within. So you have the 51 Mantle, sort of maybe August of this year, there was a unique spike. It pushed the index up a little bit, but looks like the Maze was down. So it
Matthew.
tempered the effect
Yeah.
that Mantle had. So I don't know. I thought this was very interesting and maybe not surprising, though.
I do like the way that they kind of move in concert.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to say that there's a pattern here is incredibly evident to me.
Yep.
I mean, I study charts all day long, right? So when I look at this, I go, man, these are all, they're highly correlated, which is a word that you would use to say, all right, it's if one's going up, the only anomaly is that one spike where the Mantle went up a lot and the Maze went down.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have a period 4 months before that where the Maze went up and the Mantle went down.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, they run. It's not perfect where they always move together. But correlation means if one moves, they all move, right? They
Yep.
kind of move together in concert. And so
Yep.
that tells me that the card market is probably more correlated than we think. And what I would draw a conclusion from that is, when you're buying cards, hey, one Mantle Maze, people are wanting to buy in that same, I don't know, genre, vintage,
Yep.
they're buying the big vintage stuff, right?
Yep. Yep. And the only lagger in that is a 52 Matthews, and I think that only lagged probably because there maybe weren't as many up for sale, because I think
Yeah.
that's one of the I want to say that's maybe one of the lower population cards in the index.
Right.
And so it may have, after a couple months, maybe someone who had one put one up for, and I don't know if some of those prices were buy it nows or auctions, but it may have been something where the big run up was, hey, I have this 52 Matthews that I really don't want anymore. I wanted to, maybe buy something else. Let me put it up there. And then after that month or two of the Maze and the Mantle and the Robinsons going up and the Aaron, maybe that prompted a sale there of the Matthews. So that's the only one, but even that one spiked. It just was a slight delay.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's no question that the bigger cards in any price weighted index are going to have more of an impact on the overall index.
Yep.
The individual cards that are priced the most, that's just how this works. And
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with using that type of a system at all. It just
Yeah.
shows there's a couple of cards that are meaningful.
Yeah. Now again, could get given data entry and time and all that stuff. Again, could we have done a vintage 100 index of just 40s cards and a separate index of just 50s cards, and then so on and so on?
Right.
Yeah, and the chart may have looked maybe slightly different, but again, with those decade breakouts, okay, you have anywhere from maybe 28, 29, 30 cards per decade. I don't know, depending on what cards you add to get to 100, it very well could mirror the ones that we have in this index. So I don't know if more data or looking at it, because you could say, well, okay, well, why even include the 70s cards? Because if they have no real impact, what's the point of having the 70s in there? Well, to me, the point of having the 70s cards in there is those are vintage cards. And this is an overall look at the vintage era cards. Now, again, could we start doing 10 different indexes and look at the, large cap index? So we're only looking at cards that are valued $5,000 or more. Sure, we could do an index and check that out. And we can do a small cap index of just 70s cards if we just had the time and ability to, you know, do all that data entry. Because I try to find a way to get data from VCP in a more effective way. And unless I'm missing something, it's look it on the screen, enter it in the spreadsheet. Look at it on
Right.
the screen, enter it in the spreadsheet. So there's no data dump that we can do that we can just, okay, here it is, and let's just sort to our heart's content over thousands of cards. We don't have that access. So we do what we do. It's not perfect, but yeah.
I'd kind of be fascinated to know, especially on the mantle, because that's just this, it's the biggest fish in the pond here.
Mhm.
It'd be interesting to overlay what the nines have done: 8, 7, 6s,
Mm,
5s, 4s, 3s, 2s, 1s, and run the same data for that one card. Maybe that would tell us something. Would we see what we think, which is there's an exponential difference in a 4 to a 5 or a 5 to a 6? Or do you
yeah.
see that? We could easily do that.
Yeah.
That might be its own little standalone video.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, just take a look at the 51 Bowman mantle as part of the index, and again, how I forget what I was bringing this up on. It was one of my recent videos. Oh, it was my top 10 eBay sales for the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And there's a when you go from a 7 to an 8, and then to an 8 to a 9, and 9 if there are any 10s to a 10 for some of these vintage cards, that delta or the change can go up dramatically versus going from a 2 to a 3 to a 4, or 4 to a
Right.
5 to a 6. A lot of cards I look at just for my personal collection when I'm deciding between should I go for a 4 or 5 or a 6, we may be talking about, depending on the card, maybe $100 difference between a 4 and a 6. You go from a 7 to a 9, you could be talking about $10,000. I mean, again, depending on the card,
Right.
huge increases. And a lot of it's population, a lot of it's demand and different things. So yeah, maybe something just focusing, do 1 month and focus on the mantle over the different grades over time and see how that's been going. Because again, I can go back, not sure about 4 years for all 10 grades, but well, I'm not sure how many 10s there are out there of the 51, but maybe stop it at PSA 8 or 9 or something like that. But
I just think we just created a spinoff show for
yeah.
the Vintage 100, is looking at each card and just playing. I'm going to be up all night now because I'm going to be
Yeah.
starting to input data, John. I'm going to do that for the mantle. I
Yeah,
inspired
it's
myself.
again, and that's the neat thing about this. We started this, and again, we haven't been doing it for a full year, and we started with these 100 cards. But there's so many ways that we can branch out with this data and look at, like I said, individual cards. Dare I say it, a different index altogether. It just comes down to our time and our ability to. The data is there. The data is available. We just have to grab it and put it into whatever format we want. So it's just a
Right.
matter of just time. And I know
Sure.
you have a lot of free time, so maybe yes.
Hey, I can choose to spend my time and would be fun to me. So,
Yeah.
but I wonder, people, the worst complaint I think we get about all of our data is we use one data point for the whole month.
Yeah.
And while I understand the negative part of that, why
Mhm.
people would dude, if I do the mantle, just look at the mantle. I'm not going to average out all the prices.
Oh,
It'll take me forever on every grade. Like,
forget
give me
about the mantle. The 1980 Ricky Henderson.
right,
In any month, there's probably at least 50 sales of a PSA 8.
right.
So do we enter all 50 data points for that month? Do we get in our calculator? If we do an average, we have to enter either in a spreadsheet or do it manually in a calculator, all 50, and then take that average again. So the source that we're getting the information from, it's static data on the website. We can't download it from VCP. We can't cut and paste. There's just no way of getting it in one lump sum into, say, an Excel spreadsheet and then playing around with it. So whatever data
Right.
that we do, it's, unless someone comes up with a different way of doing it, manually entering numbers into a spreadsheet. So
Yeah, if we could,
that's
like you said, if we could download the raw data, we could then, oh man, we'd go to
yeah,
town. And yes, we would use it. Yes, and yes, all the things that people want us to do. Yes,
yeah,
yes, yes. I'm not going to put in thousands of points of data every month.
yeah,
Nor are you.
yeah,
And we should crowd fund this, like,
yeah.
crowdsource all the. All right, you
Sure.
do one. We could have 100 people do one card each.
Yep.
Then we could get every point of data.
Yeah.
But until we have 100 volunteers, I'm sorry, guys, it ain't
Yeah.
happening.
Yep. Yep.
Good stuff. What
Yeah.
else?
I think that, oh, there we go here. That's it. At
Hey,
least
look at
that's
that.
what I had for, always try to look for new ways. And again, Theo, thank you for the idea of taking a look at some of the, heavy hitters in the index and how that impacts the overall index. So yes, definitely, we'd love to know your thoughts, your comments, your suggestions. Again, knowing our limitations with the data that we just talked about. Um, uh, Again, we have some ideas, maybe some areas that we want to take this index or the analysis. But if you have some suggestions, we're welcome to it.
Do you want to share the good news about trying to get some other guests on here to go through the data with you besides my boring, sorry voice?
Yes, going into 2023, and I'll open it up here to see if there are any volunteers. Knowing with our schedules, Mike's schedule, my growing schedule on YouTube during doing different things, we'd like to have some guests on to give Mike a little break in his schedule and talk about the index, some of the data that we see. So if you're interested in being a co-host for an episode, let me know. My email address is in the about page of my um, profile there. So shoot me an email, and if I don't get any volunteers, I may reach out to a couple. I have a couple YouTubers in mind that I think may be interested in doing this. So we'll see. We may have a switch up a little bit for a few months here and there, now and then, just to
Well,
mix things up a little bit.
I'm not quitting you,
Oh, I
John.
know.
I think getting other people's perspective, especially it'd be great if there are people out there that have been watching and following the series
Hmm.
and from the beginning to, hey, I'm one guy with one opinion, you're one guy with one opinion. It's your show, so you should have
Yep.
someone else with maybe a different take, or
Yep.
we don't have a monopoly on ideas here. So for someone else to come on and provide that, I think would be great.
Yeah.
So
And
it's
the
not that I
easy
don't
part
love you.
is, for the most part, I'm the one who does all the data entry.
Right.
So I know, Mike, you've helped out with some of the entry as well, but it's not like, hey, do you want to be a guest? And by the way, here's the access to the data. Can you look everything up for me? So I'm not looking for heavy lifting. Looking for someone to come on, and I'll share the data ahead of time. We can discuss it, whatever. So yeah, could be interesting for the upcoming year.
Cool. All right.
Yep. So
Well, thanks,
with
John.
that,
Good job.
I want to thank you, Mike, or wish you and all the YouTubers out there a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year with the friends and family that you love. With that, that's all we have for you. So until next time, thanks for watching.